Jack Reynolds hadn't expected his first diplomatic mission to involve being dragged across a polished obsidian floor by two 8-foot-tall reptilian aliens. Yet here he was, the freshly appointed Earth ambassador to the stars, getting the VIP treatment aboard the Varaxian Empire's flagship, the inevitable conquest. "The human will speak when spoken to," growled Admiral Kraz-Tul, his scaled face looming over Jack like a particularly angry dinosaur with anger management issues and too many medals. 4 yellowed eyes blinked independently as his massive clawed hands tapped impatiently on the command console. "Translator Plex, ensure the creature understands the magnitude of its situation." Lieutenant Plex, a slimmer Varaxian with what passed for a concerned expression, adjusted the translation device on his wrist. "Human Jack Reynolds, you have been brought before Admiral Kraz-Tul, Supreme Commander of the Varaxian 7th Fleet and Conqueror of the Praxis Nebula. You will answer his questions promptly and truthfully." Jack sat perfectly still in the too large metal chair. His diplomatic briefing had prepared him for many scenarios, ceremonial duels, poisoned welcome dinners, even unexpected marriage proposals. Being abducted mid-handshake during first contact wasn't in the manual. "Human, your species' pathetic vessels are no match for our armada," Admiral Kraz-Tul continued, gesturing to the view screen showing Earth's small defense force surrounded by hundreds of Varaxian warships. "Your homeworld's defenses are primitive. Tell us the activation codes for your planetary shield, and perhaps we'll only enslave half your population." Jack Reynolds stared straight ahead, his face betraying nothing. "Did the translator malfunction?" Kraz-Tul barked at Lieutenant Plex. "No, Admiral. The device functions perfectly." "Then why doesn't it respond?" Jack remained immobile, his breathing steady, his eyes fixed somewhere in the middle distance. "Perhaps it's damaged," suggested a crew member. "Humans are notoriously fragile." Admiral Kraz-Tul leaned forward until his scaly snout was inches from Jack's face. "Human, we destroyed the Arcturian Confederation when they defied us. The Peloran Alliance surrendered after witnessing a single demonstration of our planet crackers. Your species has nothing that can harm us." "Nothing." Then Jack blinked once but remained silent. "Take the human to the interrogation chamber," Kraz-Tul snarled. "We'll see how long this silence lasts when the neural probes are activated." As the guards dragged Jack away, the Admiral turned to Lieutenant Plex. "In all my cycles of conquest, I've never encountered such behavior. What is the creature planning?" Plex could only shake his head. "I don't know, Admiral. But I find it concerning." The clock started ticking. 3 hours into what the crew now called the silent standoff, Lieutenant Plex hunched over his data terminal in the ship's information center, scrolling through everything the Varaxian Empire had collected on humans. "Finding anything useful?" asked Science Officer Neelix, her slender form casting a shadow over Plex's workspace. Unlike most Varaxians, she preferred data to destruction. "Contradictions, mostly," Plex replied, rubbing his aching eyes. "Humans are simultaneously described as easily frightened prey species and irrationally fearless when cornered. They're listed as both technologically primitive and surprisingly innovative. The galactic database can't seem to make up its mind." Admiral Kraz-Tul stomped into the information center, nearly knocking over a junior officer. "Well, why is the human still silent?" "It's been subjected to 3 different interrogation protocols." "Unharmed, I hope," Plex ventured. "The diplomatic ramifications." "Forget diplomacy," Kraz-Tul roared. "This is psychological warfare. The human knows something. Its silence is a weapon." Neelix snorted softly. "With all due respect, Admiral, you're attributing strategic genius to a species that still considers cheese a delicacy." "Then explain why it refuses to speak, Science Officer." The Admiral's claws left indentations in the metal table. "Even the most stubborn prisoners cry out eventually." Perhaps, suggested Plex, the human has some kind of communication implant? Something we're not detecting? This sparked immediate paranoia. The Admiral's frills extended to their full threatening display. Scan the entire ship. Check for unusual transmissions. Increase the shield harmonics. Already done, sir, Neelix replied with professional calm. No unusual signals detected. In the officers' mess hall, the rumors had already taken on a life of their own. Crew members huddled around tables, voices hushed. I heard humans can communicate telepathically when they're stressed, whispered Navigation Officer Drex. My cousin served in the Orion sector, countered weapons specialist Vrock. He said humans secrete hallucinogenic compounds through their skin when captured. Lieutenant Plex, picking at his food nearby, tried to ignore the increasingly absurd theories. Perhaps, suggested ship psychologist Dr. Kemp, joining Plex's table uninvited, this is some cultural ritual. The database shows humans have thousands of religions and cultural practices. What kind of practice involves sitting silently while being interrogated? Plex asked. Dr. Kemp's frills fluttered in excitement. Humans practice something called meditation where they sit motionless for hours, supposedly accessing higher planes of consciousness. What if this silence is the human accessing some higher power? Plex nearly choked on his food. That's ridiculous. Is it? Dr. Kemp leaned forward. Then why is the Admiral calling an emergency command meeting about a single silent human? Plex couldn't answer that. As he headed to the command meeting, he passed the detention level. Through the monitoring screen, he could see Jack Reynolds, still sitting perfectly still, face impassive 6 hours into his capture. For the first time in his military career, Lieutenant Plex felt genuinely unnerved. Hour 6, Admiral Kraz-Tool announced to the assembled command staff, and still nothing from the human. The strain was showing on his scaled face. 2 of his 4 eyes had developed noticeable twitches. Dr. Kemp had been granted special permission to study the human and was now presenting his findings with the enthusiasm of someone who'd discovered a new fundamental particle. The human's physiological responses are fascinating, he gushed, displaying biometric readings. Blood pressure stable, heart rate consistent, stress hormones present but not overwhelming. It's as if the human is waiting. Waiting for what? Demanded the Admiral. Dr. Kemp's frills quivered with intellectual excitement. That's the million-credit question. I've developed several theories based on xenopsychological principles and human cultural archives. He displayed a series of increasingly bizarre diagrams on the main screen. Theory 1. The human is engaged in temporal perception manipulation, what their culture calls Zen. Theory 2. The human may be accessing collective species memory through what they term the collective unconscious. Theory 3. Most concerning. The human could be establishing a psychic link with its homeworld for a coordinated response. Science Officer Neelix made a sound suspiciously like a snort. Doctor, you're suggesting a species that still uses combustion engines for ground transportation has mastered psychic abilities we've never detected. How else do you explain it? Dr. Kemp challenged. We've tried noise disruption, temperature variation, light manipulation, even introducing subtle atmospheric changes. Nothing provokes a response. Lieutenant Plex, who had been quietly analyzing the situation, spoke up. Has anyone simply asked the human why it refuses to speak? The room fell silent. Don't be ridiculous, the Admiral finally snapped. That would be admitting our confusion. The Empire never shows weakness. A communication officer burst into the room. Admiral, urgent transmission from High Command. The massive view screen flickered to life, revealing Supreme Overlord Jaxax's car, his ancient scales gleaming with ceremonial oils. Admiral Kraz-Tool. We received your report about the captured human diplomat. Explain why this single creature warrants an emergency transmission. Kraz-Tool straightened to attention. Supreme Overlord, the human exhibits unprecedented psychological resistance. We believe it may possess information about Earth defenses that could threaten our conquest plans. A single silent human threatens the Varaxian Empire? The Supreme Overlord's voice dripped with dangerous skepticism. Not directly, Supreme One, but its behavior suggests. It suggests you're being outmaneuvered by a primitive species, Xax's car interrupted. Resolve this situation immediately or be replaced. High command out. The screen went dark, leaving Admiral Kraz-Tool literally steaming with rage and embarrassment. Bring the human to the command center, he ordered. I want every senior officer to observe it directly. Someone will figure out what game it's playing. As Jack Reynolds was escorted in, Dr. Kemp approached with a device resembling a colander covered in blinking lights. With your permission, Admiral, I'd like to try my thought pattern amplifier. Before anyone could object, he placed the ridiculous contraption on Jack's head. The human's expression remained unchanged. Fascinating. Dr. Kemp exclaimed after studying the readouts. According to this, the human is thinking about nothing and everything simultaneously. Lieutenant Plex wondered if it was too late to request a transfer to the Empire's accounting division. 9 hours into what was now being called the human incident, the Varaxian fleet's disciplined order began unraveling like a cheap uniform after laundry day. Admiral. The communications officer's voice cracked with stress. The relentless subjugator is reporting navigation system failures. The merciless vanquisher has lost weapons targeting capabilities. 3 support vessels are experiencing life support fluctuations. Admiral Kraz-Tool's scales had lost their healthy greenish sheen, turning a sickly yellow. How is this possible? The human has been in our custody the entire time. Perhaps, Dr. Kemp suggested, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement, the human doesn't need to do anything. What if its mere presence is causing these effects? Science Officer Neelix slammed her datapad down. That violates every known physical law. Does it? Lieutenant Plex asked quietly. The database entry on humans includes multiple warnings about Murphy's Law, a mysterious human phenomenon where improbable system failures occur in proximity to humans under stress. This unfortunate comment, meant as a scholarly observation, sent ripples of panic through the command center. Quarantine the human cell. Ordered the Admiral. Full electromagnetic isolation. Too late, muttered Weapons Officer Gorks. The contamination has already spread. On the main view screen, the fleet's formation was visibly deteriorating as ships reported various inexplicable malfunctions. The Admiral received 7 emergency communications in quick succession. Fleet Command, came the panicked voice of Captain Zri of the inevitable victory. Our ship's AI is reciting something called poetry and refuses to process targeting commands. Admiral, reported Security Chief Drax, crew members are reporting strange dreams about a place called Ohio. The ship's AI chose that moment to announce, unusual data patterns detected. Probability algorithms failing, logic circuits experiencing unexpected recursion loops. Lieutenant Plex, curious despite the chaos, reviewed the ship's external sensors. Admiral, I'm detecting no actual weapons fire or aggressive action from Earth. Could we be overreacting to coincidental system failures? Overreacting? The Admiral's voice rose to a pitch previously unheard from a Varaxian throat. The human hasn't moved or spoken for 9 hours. No species behaves this way naturally. Dr. Kemp was frantically consulting ancient texts. There are legends from the dark sector about a species that could alter reality through focused consciousness. We dismissed them as superstition, but what if humans are descendants of these beings? Science Officer Neelix attempted one last stand for rationality. Sir, perhaps the fleet's systems are simply experiencing cascading failures due to compatibility issues with Earth's electromagnetic field. Then explain why they started precisely when we captured the human. The Admiral roared. On the security monitor, Jack Reynolds remained motionless, his expression unchanged, as though waiting for something only he could perceive. A junior science officer burst into the command center. "Sir, analysis of the human's last meal shows it contained trace amounts of an unknown substance." "Poison?" gasped the Admiral. "Worse, sir. Something our chemical analyzers identify only as caffeine." The word echoed ominously through the command center. By hour 11, the inevitable conquest more closely resembled a ship full of cadets on their first space voyage than the pride of the Varaxian fleet. Admiral Krastul had taken to pacing in tight circles, occasionally stopping to stare at the security feed showing the still motionless human. "What if," he muttered to nobody in particular, "this is how they conquered the Zeta Reticuli system? We always wondered how such an advanced civilization fell so quickly." Lieutenant Plex had spent the last 2 hours compiling a comprehensive timeline of events. "Admiral, I've analyzed every incident since the human's capture. There's no logical connection between the human's silence and the fleet malfunctions." "Logic?" The Admiral laughed hysterically. Was it logical when the Devourer of Worlds reported its fearsome planet cracker weapon transformed into something called a disco ball? Was it logical when 3 elite boarding craft found their navigation systems redirecting them to something called Walmart? Before Plex could respond, the security officer monitoring Jack Reynolds shouted in alarm. The human moved. Every Varaxian in the command center froze. On screen, Jack Reynolds had indeed shifted position slightly, uncrossing and recrossing his legs. "Full battle stations," bellowed the Admiral. "All weapons systems online. Prepare for possible dimensional rupture." Science Officer Neelix had been unusually quiet for the past hour. She now approached the Admiral, holding a datapad with trembling claws. "Sir," she said, her voice barely audible, "I've been conducting deeper research into human biology. I've discovered something disturbing." "Speak, Science Officer." "Humans don't need to vocalize to communicate. They have a secondary communication method invisible to our sensors." She paused dramatically. "They call it body language." Gasps echoed around the command center. "Ned?" "You mean," Lieutenant Plex asked, horrified, "the human has been communicating this entire time and we simply couldn't detect it?" "Precisely," Neelix confirmed. "And according to my analysis, that leg cross we just witnessed translates roughly to final countdown initiated." This was the breaking point for Admiral Krastul. His military training, his years of combat experience, even his natural Varaxian aggression, all crumbled in the face of an enemy he couldn't understand. "Prepare my personal shuttle," he ordered, "and send emergency evacuation signals to all ships capable of receiving transmissions." "Admiral." Lieutenant Plex was shocked. "You're abandoning the conquest of Earth based on a human crossing its legs?" "You weren't there during the Arcturian catastrophe," the Admiral hissed. "You didn't see what happened to the last fleet that ignored warnings they didn't understand." Dr. Kemp, who had been monitoring Jack's vital signs, suddenly yelped in alarm. "The human's brain activity just spiked. It's preparing to act." On screen, Jack Reynolds had straightened in his chair and appeared to be taking a deep breath. "It's happening," whispered the Admiral. "May the Ancient Ones protect us all." "Excuse me," Jack Reynolds said, his voice perfectly ordinary after 12 hours of silence. "Could I possibly get a glass of water?" The silence that followed made Jack's previous 12 hours seem positively chatty by comparison. Every Varaxian in the command center stared at the screen in disbelief. "Water?" Admiral Krastul finally managed to croak. "Yes, please," Jack replied politely. "Standard diplomatic protocol suggests maintaining silence during initial capture until basic needs must be addressed. I was getting rather thirsty." Lieutenant Plex approached the screen cautiously. "You mean you weren't engaging in psychological warfare?" Goodness, no, Jack seemed genuinely surprised. Earth Diplomatic Corps Manual, Section 47.3, when captured by potentially hostile forces, maintain calm silence to prevent accidental escalation through misinterpreted statements. I was simply following protocol. The Voraxian command staff exchanged bewildered glances. But the fleet malfunctions, began Science Officer Neelix. Jack shrugged. I wouldn't know anything about that. I've been sitting in this room the whole time. Later, as the Voraxian fleet executed what they officially recorded as a strategic redeployment, and what humans would call running away like their tails were on fire, Lieutenant Plex brought Jack Reynolds a cup of water. The Admiral has authorized your return to Earth, Plex informed him. A transport is being prepared. Jack sipped his water calmly. Thank you. I hope this unfortunate misunderstanding won't prevent future diplomatic relations. Misunderstanding, Plex repeated, still struggling to process how thoroughly they had psyched themselves out. Yes, I suppose that's one word for it. 3 days later, as Earth celebrated its unexpected victory over the fearsome Voraxian Empire, General Martinez of Earth Defense Force dropped a classified file on Jack's desk. Congratulations, Ambassador Reynolds. Your diplomatic silence routine worked perfectly. Jack raised an eyebrow. Sir? The automated fleet disruption system we installed throughout the sector last month activates when it detects a human biosignature in captivity. Causes random but harmless malfunctions in enemy ships. Brilliant psychological warfare without firing a shot. I had no idea, Jack admitted. General Martinez laughed. Of course not. That's why it worked so well. The Voraxians were looking for some grand human strategy, some secret weapon or psychic ability. They never considered that their fleet was being pranked by our tech while you were genuinely just following standard diplomatic protocol. As the general left, Jack looked down at his diploma from the Earth Diplomatic Corps. The Corps motto gleamed in gold lettering. In a universe of misunderstandings, sometimes saying nothing says everything. He couldn't help but smile. Humanity hadn't needed superweapons or battle fleets to defeat the mighty Voraxian Empire. Just 12 hours of silence, a simple request for water, and the universe's most powerful force, an enemy's paranoia,